Now, I'm delighted to be joined by our former man in Washington, former national security advisor, Kim Darroch. Earlier, I don't know if you noticed, but Hannah showed this poll that we had. You can have a sort of quick look at it now if you want to. I think we're going to be able to show it. We are, which basically shows a sort of league table of a sort of rogues table of the countries that British people think are the sort of most toxic, led by Russia. And this was done before the before the recent invasion. At a time like this, when you've got somebody as malign as Putin, is it proper for a British government just to hold its nose and do deals with, MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince there? Many people see him as behind the murder of Khashoggi, the journalist. I mean, cozying up to him at these circumstances, is that the right thing to do?
First thing to say, Rob, is this is very difficult. Every government I've ever worked for has been accused of double standards over who they deal with and who they don't. Second, every government I've worked for has tried to achieve some common features, some common standards on how you deal with rogue governments or governments that behave terribly, as like the ones you're talking to. You need good channels of communication so you can explain to them and pressure them to change their behaviour. You need to have measures in your pocket ready to use if their actions go beyond the acceptable. What then interferes with it is economics. And some of the countries on your board, sales to them, trade with them, business with them, supplies tens of thousands of jobs in this country. And that's where all governments struggle over whether they can actually be as tough with them as maybe they should.
Or in the current crisis, when we can't buy oil from Putin, we need it from somewhere else until we have a different energy policy.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I wouldn't have advised the Prime Minister to go quite at this juncture to Saudi Arabia. It just doesn't feel right in the circumstances, especially when I think there were 81 executions in Saudi Arabia a few days ago. Yeah. So this feels to me like a clumsy piece of timing. Yeah. But you are right that were Saudi Arabia greatly to increase its production, which it could, 2 or 3 million barrels of oil a day, then that would make quite a big difference to oil prices, potentially. And if oil prices go towards $200 a barrel, that's pretty bad for the world economy.
Yeah, and it's also pretty bad for living standards, which we've just been talking about. Yeah. Kim, don't go away. Lots more I want to ask you. So there'll be more with Lord Darroch in just a second, and much more from Tulip and Robert. There'll be Ukraine, there'll be dealing with dictators, maybe a bit more on Nazanin. See you in a minute or two. Welcome back. I'm delighted Kim Darroch. Lord Darroch is still with us. Liz Truss said earlier today that she doesn't have a lot of confidence in these peace talks between Putin and Ukraine, even though the noises coming out of them are a bit more positive. Do you think they're real? Can one have any faith that they will lead any time soon to a ceasefire?
I think this, Robert. Plan A for Putin, which was the quick victory, his tanks in Kiev within 48 hours of the invasion, cheering crowds, obviously hasn't worked. He's now on Plan B, which is trying to bomb the Ukrainian people into submission, and I think he's going to let that run for a few weeks. So I don't think there's any prospect, really, of any progress now. But I think it's a good thing the talks are going on, because at some point down the track, things can happen. Plan B might not work either. He could come under pressure from countries that really matter to him, like China in first place. The Russian economy is close to collapse. Ruble has crashed and may be defaulting on debts within the next 24, 48 hours. All of that may mean that somewhere down the track, the structure is there, the process is going on, and actually has to move. So I'm glad they're happening, but I don't expect any progress for a while.
And certainly if you heard the kind of things he was saying in that speech earlier on today, where, I mean, the abuse he was sort of throwing at Russians who don't support him was...
Although I think that's standard Russian negotiating practice, especially if you were trained in the KGB, as he was.
And you've got this is a yes/no question, because I've got to go to Hannah, who's got some fascinating stuff for us. But just yes/no. Richard Radcliffe, was he right to ignore Foreign Office advice to keep quiet? This is a yes/no.
Probably he was, yes.
OK. Fascinating going from such a Foreign Office mandarin. Now, over to you, Hannah.
Thanks, Robert. Yes, we've been hearing a lot recently, haven't we, about sanctions against wealthy Russian people and businesses like Pepsi, Apple and Amazon pulling out of the country. It seems the Kremlin has noticed. Just look at this tweet from Max Seddon at the FT, who was watching President Putin's TV briefing today. Putin just said the West is trying to cancel Russia. Now, whether or not that's true, from some work that we've been doing, it does sound like the British public are very much in favour of freezing out Russia as much as possible. In our exclusive poll carried out by Savanta Comres, it turns out 73% of us think brands should stop selling their products and services in Russia. Only 7%, that's the bit in pink here, think that that would be a bad idea. 71% are in favour of blocking Russian athletes and artists from taking part in sport or cultural events. And 64%, almost two-thirds, even think there should be a full-on boycott of Russian culture. Perhaps we're all going to stop listening to Tchaikovsky, if we ever did in the first place. But before you all start blaming young people for this, let's just take a look at a really surprising split. It is people over the age of 65 who are driving these calls for Russian culture to be cancelled, with 80% of them in favour. 18 to 24-year-olds are, in fact, less convinced. Less than half of them willing to give up their aspiration of one day reading War and Peace. But ultimately, if the point of all of this is to try to stop the invasion, people are really split on what effect that will have. 41% think it will be effective. 41% say ultimately ineffective. The rest simply don't know. People do want to do more, but they're still not sure whether it will work. Robert.
Thanks, Anna. I mean, we all, I think economic sanctions are a sensible thing to do, and as you say, could actually force Putin at some point into a rethink. But banning Chekhov and Tchaikovsky, bonkers.
I wouldn't invite the Bolshoi Ballet to appear in London.
No, sure.
But I wouldn't ask people not to listen to Tchaikovsky. I think that is going too far. But official cultural organisations of the Russian state, I wouldn't have them over here.
But this is not, Tulip, a war against the Russian people or against Russian culture. And, you know, we saw, the Welsh Philharmonic saying it actually cancelled a Tchaikovsky concert. If we saw the National Theatre deciding it couldn't put on Chekhov, that would be terrible.
I think it's symbolic, Robert, to be honest, and I think telling people to stop reading War and Peace is a step too far. But what I will say is that some of the sanctions that have come in place could be a lot stronger, the economic sanctions that the government's brought. We support them from the Labour Party. They could be a lot stronger. For example, we supported the ban on luxury goods. There are lots of loopholes if you look at it closely, and I have looked at it closely, which means it won't have maximum impact. So I think economic sanctions are important. I think targeting individuals is important. That's what I'm more concerned about. I think making sure that our economic system has no Russian influence in it is more important than cancelling culture.
Yeah,
personally.
but on this, it's surely important for us to maintain our links with the Russian people and Russian culture. I mean, they've given so much to the world, let's be clear.
I love Russia and I love the Russian people. I hate Putin and what he's doing to a great civilization. I won't be locking away my Anna Karenina or Eugene Onegin. I believe that Russia's made a huge contribution to civilization. What we see is an abnegation of that by this bully. And I think that the point about international cooperation on doing things that really make a difference, to bring frankly, that regime to its knees financially, to, as Kim says, to force really the pace when it comes to the different phases that Putin is going through, is crucial if we're going to break what looks like to be a very long and bloody attempt to annex Ukraine, which will cause massive destabilisation to the world economy if it drags on for months, if not longer.
And I think, the related point is, one of the great things about the West is we believe in freedom of expression, we believe in free speech. In a sense, one of the reasons, obviously, there's the cost in lives to what's going on, but it's also about a battle for freedom. And freedom involves freedom to read and listen to what you like.
Absolutely. And just to build on Robert's last point, and this is not the Putin of 20 years ago. He has become embittered and paranoid, and possibly a bit unhinged, or maybe a lot unhinged. If he gets deposed as a result of this, and I don't see how this ends well for him, we would want to be in a position to reach out to the Russian people afterwards and try and build a new relationship.
So important. Now, unfortunately, that is it. Next Wednesday, we'll hear how or whether the Chancellor will help us through the cost of living crisis, so you can't miss our show if you want to steer your way through these tricky times. Bye for now.